Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm talking about the two-part episode in season 4, The Burnout. I touched on this episode a little bit way back in the beginning of my YouTube channel, but I thought I would expand upon it a bit more since it's a couple of years later and I'm sort of moving along in sequence on the seasons now. So let's do this. This was an episode we shot as if it were all one episode as opposed to two parts. Now, I think it originally aired as a two-hour episode, but then sometimes nowadays with reruns, it will air as two separate part 1 and part 2. But both parts, the entire script was written by John McGreevy and the entire episode was shot by Harry Harris. Early in the episode, we see Erin, and she is primping in front of the mirror with her new dress and being oh so vain about it, which of course plays a main story point within this, where her vanity becomes one of the things that impacts the fact that John Boy's book burns in the fire. Also part of the setup, we see John Boy and he pulls out a pipe and fills it and lights it, and I love how we go around and we see the reactions to the various different adults in the family, and this is the one and only time that I remember seeing John Boy have a pipe in the entire series. I think very early in the series, maybe one time we saw John with a pipe and he may have spoken about it at some other point, but yeah, the smoking pipes was not something we really saw in the Waltons within the family particularly. We also early on established the fact that Grandpa has a habit of forgetting to unplug electrical appliances. At first, he doesn't unplug the heating pad that he has been using by the radio. And then later on, of course, he gets in the bathtub. He has the heater on in the bathroom. And when he leaves the bathroom, he does not unplug the heater. So now we have two different potential sources for that fire. John Boy's pipe we actually see as a potential fire starter when he is in his room writing. He has lit the pipe. He hears a sound. He goes into the hallway and he sees Elizabeth there. So he goes to put his pipe down on a little table in the hallway. It falls off and lands on the carpet. And as we know, it was a lit pipe. We are then into the whole fire sequence, which was all incredibly intense stuff to shoot because we did have real flames, and they were sort of gas jets that they put up along the base of the floors in that hallway. But that was not a particularly wide hallway, so to have gas jets and flames going up the walls in that hallway, and then for the men who were having to hit at the flames with towels and blankets and things like that. I mean, there was real fire flying around there. We were all wearing fireproof flannel nightgowns, for heaven's sake, and long hair. So they did fireproof our pajamas, thank goodness, and it did damp down our hair. But there was a lot of scurrying up in that upper hallway and then into the bedroom. We mostly saw smoke in the bedrooms at first. And you do see us throwing clothes out the window, which comes back into play later on when I'm like, how did we have clothes to wear? Well, this is certainly how the girls, and we see the boys throwing clothes out the window. So all of that was happening very quickly. This was the intercutting between the inside set and the outside set. But when you see the girls throwing clothes out the window from the outside of the house, you see that we are throwing clothes out of the center window. Someone had asked a question about the windows and stuff. So in this case, the girls are throwing clothes out of that center window. Whereas the boys, we don't really see them throwing the clothes out, which would say to me that the boys' bedroom was not on the front of the house, their window. And I do recall that at one point when I was there on the exterior lot, when we were shooting the exterior stuff and we were up there throwing things out the window and sticking your head out the window to throw things out, the two windows next to ours had big sort of sheet metal sort of enclosures that they put on the back side of those two side windows, and then they blew those out so that the flame went out and was just visible in the window and did not shoot fire back inside the structure of the house there. So they were able to contain that a bit, but it was a little daunting to be out there and throwing something out and have something sort of explode out next to you. It wasn't injured or anything, but it was startling for sure. And then of course we shot all of that upstairs stuff in those hallways, and I mean the sequence. I mean, Mary had to fall down in the hallway amidst, and of course the flames were not as close to people always as it might have looked like, but still it was a tight contained area. So for her to have to fall on the ground and lie there amongst that, and for Richard and Ralph to have to be in there and dealing around the flames, was quite something. So they chose places to put the flames where I think they showed well for the camera, but kept us as safe as possible. We were also barefoot, so keep that in mind. That was not ideal either. But we did have fire marshals on the set at all times. There was safety crews. They did everything they could to keep everybody as safe as possible. So appreciated that. Of course, then we have the exterior back lot aspect of filming the fire, and that was all shot one Friday night, and it was quite something. Obviously, word had gotten around on the studio lot that we were going to be burning the Walton House, and we had, I don't know how many spectators, people from around the studio that came out to watch this shoot, and that's pretty unusual to have people that work in the industry show up to watch something like this. I just remember there being a lot of people, but I just, again, remember how real and how intense it all felt. And it was very easy to play those scenes and play the emotions of the scenes, because it was easy to play, make-believe and what if. And you see Ralph go running back into what looks like a burning house, and you see, him bring back out, us waiting to see, are John Boy and Erin and Daddy going to make it back out, and looking at the house with flames visible and stuff like that was, it was very emotional. But fortunately, we shot all of it and nobody was injured, and that was the good news. In the story shortly after that, you see John with, the fire crew working to put the fire out. And I thought it was interesting that he now had pants and shoes on. I'm not quite sure where these pants and shoes were supposed to have come from, but it makes perfect sense that he was indeed. I think it would have been distracting to see John in his long johns still putting out a fire and barefoot. It would have made no sense. So we're taking a leap of faith there that somehow, clothes of his were tossed out onto the roof as well, and we were able to get those. When we're into the barn and everybody's in the shock, the aftermath of the fire, and we start up in the loft. I love this shot of Harry Harris's, the boys up in the hay loft, and then it comes down and you see just Erin and Mary Ellen just sort of in shock. And then the fact that Mary Ellen turns her head, and that allows the camera to follow where my head went, and that takes us over to where Mama and Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa are, and Elizabeth. So those are more cases of the types of things that directors do to motivate the movement of the camera at times. In terms of the set dressing and all of that, they obviously did not burn the house. They brought in charred lumber and things like that. And in the outside, we saw the scorched parts of the house, and we got more of the sense of the damage when we went into the interior sets. And evidently our art director, Ed Graves, who I've spoken about, he arranged to get real charred wood and from real fires, and, just gathered up all of this debris, put them into the living room, and they, put whatever it was that they put on the walls to make the walls in the house look like they had been charred and burnt. So all of that was brought in when we went to shoot those sequences of the house. Again, interesting to me that the kids were barefoot when we walked through the house, supposedly the morning after, and somebody said something about, oh, be careful, don't touch things, things are still hot. And yet we're walking around barefoot in there. So that to me made no sense. If things were supposed to be hot, then yes, I think our feet would have been protected, or they would have just not had the children go inside the house. But they wanted that for the story. That's what I have for you for part 1 about the 2-hour episode, The Burnout. I'll be back to wrap up the rest of the story of The Burnout next time. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.